Hi everyone, and welcome to my review of one of my favourite comedies of all time, Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, in 1964. A film where even the title, is just hilarious. So yes, another one of the set, of course the Kubrick set I'm going through, and of course have actually got it, here on Blu-ray as well, and actually yes, this film, of course, is one of the most acclaimed Kubrick films. It's actually the highest on Rotten Tomatoes. You could say overall, along with 2001, and actually maybe Barry Lyndon, critically, this is the most successful. It's kind of just a love film in general as well. And yes, of course, I saw this for the first time in 2014. It's once I'd got some Stanley Kubrick Blu-rays, and of course the Visionary Filmmaker Collection as well, which didn't include this, so I bought it separately, of course, on this, and of course I'd seen The Shining, Spartacus, as I said, and Full Metal Jacket before all these, many years before this, 2014. Then of course I watched The Clockwork Orange, and then I thought, I've got to buy the set, I've got to see every Kubrick film. Of course I saw Barry Lyndon, 2001, and actually shortly afterwards it was Dr. Strangelove, and it's kind of really interesting as well because I'd studied history and stuff quite recently before this. One of the topics was the Cold War. Of course, this it is actually a Cold War kind of satire, and it's of course what if someone presses the wrong button, and stuff. And of course this came out at the height of all this kind of paranoia. Cold War of course lasted decades, technically. But yes, this really was risky. Now, of course, many Kubrick films are risky, especially Clockwork Orange, and actually in many regards Eyes Wide Shut. We'll get to that. But yes, this film, very, very risky to make a film like this, and stuff. And of course, it is very, very, kind of very much a black comedy. In many regards, it's kind of Kubrick's most childlike, film. In many areas, you could say Clockwork Orange, a bit more, but maybe as well at times Full Metal Jacket and stuff. But yes, this one's really very, very, it's very, very light-hearted at times and kind of innocent. But then again, it is very, very disturbing and dark. So it's a very, very interesting film. And actually, for me, yes, as of course I announced it in the first couple of seconds of the video, it is one of my favourite comedies of all time. I'd seen, of course, Clockwork and everything, but just before this, 2014, and then afterwards, once I saw this, I just thought, does it stop the amount of masterpieces that I'm going to see from this guy? And really, this is definitely an absolute masterpiece, of cinema. So, of course, the main kind of plot of the film is, of course, there's this most of the film takes place in kind of three different locations. Of course, you've got Mandrake, who's kind of with Jack Ripper for most of the film, and as things go on there, this is probably it's probably going to be a spoiler review. And basically, he Jack Ripper you start to learn very early on that he kind of is going insane with paranoia, really, and stuff of communists. He thinks that they're polluting the waters and stuff. And yes, generally very, very paranoid, unhinged, and everything goes down in this base with him and of course Mandrake, who of course played by Peter Sellers, and then of course you've got the President Merkin, also played by Sellers, as well Dr. Strangelove as a character who comes into in the second half of the film, again played by Sellers. Now of course I've been watching quite a lot of Peter Sellers films recently, and of course one of my favourite actors of all time. For me, this is probably the best, film. I think it's probably better than Lolita, although I'm not going to say what I prefer. It's very, very close in preference and quality. I think that this is probably the better of the two films, Kubrick films. So therefore, the best Peter Sellers film that I've seen, and really, yes, I'd say possibly his best performance, although you could argue A Shot in the Dark, really, and Time Strikes Again, Pink Panther Strikes Again. But yes, this one is so perfect. It is mind blowing what he does in this film. Three different roles, very, very distinct at times. Within conversation, and stuff, and almost the kind of trio of conversations there, and it's just so seamless. Again, I keep forgetting it's Sellers. I really do. Maybe Dr. Strangelove, the character, is more similar to you know the Pink Panther kind of roles and stuff, especially the later ones. Yeah, some of his performances. The other two, it's very very distinct and kind of. I always forget, you know, that it's kind of Sellers, especially you know when he's kind of in conversation with Doctor Strangelove, you know, the president, and basically yes, the plot is this. It's about this, you know, B-52 bomber. You know, they're not given the right, you know, communication things that happen, and basically they've got the bombs, and of course they're flying to their targets in Russia, and yes, everyone's trying to stop it. You know, in the war room, basically, and you've got different subplots going throughout the film, and of course you see the pilots. That's kind of one area of the film. You know, of course, all kind of edited together and stuff. So it's kind of back and forward, building in the intensity, of course, throughout the film. And of course, you've got the Jack Ripper. You know, kind of with of course, you know, kind of Peter Sellers' other character in there. And yes, of course, you've actually got you know, some other things going on there early on. And yes, basically this film balances out different you know, kind of storylines, you could say. And of course, it's this very very you know, kind of claustrophobic thriller, very very tight, a hilarious film, a very very dark satire, and of course, yes, it's just one of the best, you know, acting kind of ensembles. You've got so many great actors here, you know, giving some of the best performances. Sterling Hayden, wow, he is stunning in this film, even better than he was in The Killing, and of course, Peter Sellers, you know, say no more. You've got so many performances here. You know, George C. Scott, who is just hilarious in the film. What he does with his face actually is comparable, you know, kind of Jim Carrey. You could actually compare it to that. You know, the kind of what you call rubber face kind of thing, and so many other, you know, Chaplin even. It's just so amazing in this film. Of course, the fall as well, the stumble, genius stuff, and of course, the script to this film is absolutely perfect. It's one of the very best scripts for me in cinema. You know, just what encompasses, you know, everything really about scripts. You know, it is here. Of course, all the themes in this film are so masterfully executed. You know, it's just so perfect, this film, and it's just, when I first watched it, I was just, you know, in stitches, and it's so many different subtle things. You know, of course, yes, it'd probably benefit if you kind of literally, if you know just a little bit about the Cold War, you know, because there's certain moments, you know, kind of maybe more subtle moments that you might not catch on the first time. At least, you know, if you've not, you know, kind of aware of what happened and stuff, and some just a couple of things. But again, you know, it's something that it's not just you know, subtle stuff, hilarious, you know, kind of outrageously hilarious at many moments. Of course, there is some slapstick in there as well, as I've said, and of course, Slim Pickens, you know, stuff with him is so funny. Of course, the ending to the film as well, you know, where he's riding the bomb, is just one of the greatest moments in cinema, especially in comedies. And it's just, of course, the ending shots. What a kind of bizarre mix of you know, kind of hilarious, haunting, you know, very very disturbing. You know, of course, if this ever, you know, did happen in this way, it's just so disturbing. And of course, there's a beauty to it. There really is. Of course, the way it's kind of like a trance-like effect. And again, the opening credits to this film. Wow, really, what a wonderful way to open the film. Of course, Try a Little Tenderness, you know, is playing there, and it's just a perfect choice of music to kind of open the film. Very very trance-like, kind of hypnotic kind of opening. Just you know, kind of elevates, you know, the way that it kind of it's above the clouds, and it's just the lighting, you know, and of course the choice of music is perfect. The actual text as well. I just love the whole kind of design, you know, of this kind of the text throughout the film. You know, in the credits and stuff. And it's all kind of the way it's arranged. It's really really genius, and just the whole way as well that the kind of the planes are shot, and just it's so amazing. All the kind of scenes, you know, with the pilots, it's just amazing. And of course, I actually prefer even more the other parts of the film. You know, this film is all round perfect, you know, for me. And yes, basically, as the film goes on, it escalates in tension. You know, kind of all the subplots and the kind of things that are weaved in there. You know, they all come together wonderfully. And of course, it is a hilarious film. It's actually very touching at times, in moments. And of course, Very, very disturbing. Of course, this is the film where Kubrick, for me, became what I think instantly, just instantly, of Kubrick, I think whenever I think about his films, every day pretty much, it's kind of Doctor Strangelove onwards, and I mean the kind of the way he frames, the way he lights his films. Oh yeah, of course, there's differences throughout the later ones, but again, there's an intensity to this, and again, a kind of dreamlike effect. You've got this going on, this kind of very, very off at times, the angles that he uses, the kind of just the lenses that he would use for his films, especially 2001, Clockwork Orange. There, of course, A Clockwork Orange is probably the most Kubrick film, you could say, in terms of the style, what kind of is recognisable, as a Kubrick film. It's probably the most. A Clockwork Orange. I'm not saying that's his best film. We'll get to that. Who knows? Yeah, it may be the best. I'm not going to say, but basically yes. The way he frames, and stuff, and the way kind of the arrangements, of course, of actors, and just the sets, everything about the way this film looks is definitely Kubrick. This is just stunning. It really is. I think it's just after I'd seen this, and of course Barry Lyndon and Clockwork Orange and stuff, I really did become obsessed, and I thought, yes, there's not really any question for me. Maybe Spielberg, is the only one that comes close, really. That Kubrick is the greatest director of all time. It's just one of his many mind-blowing films, masterpieces. I don't think actually it's in his top 5. I think not even top 6. I think that's how good he is. I absolutely adore this film. It's one of my favourite comedies. It's so layered. It's so it's so comforting, this film, to revisit. There's such a charm to it. Of course, yes, it's very, very dark material at times. But there's a comfort, and there's a kind of a weird charm, and a very just so enjoyable charm about all these characters put in this situation. It's just such a kind of a charming kind of scenario. Of course, the performances, it's just very, very innocence to it. There's an innocence, there's a kind of childlike just way about the film, at times, and balanced out with the kind of disturbing kind of undertones as well, and of course the subject matter. And you have one of the greatest films of all time. It's just so such a film I kind of revisit with comfort. It really is, and it's kind of just of course very, very risky. But I think really I don't see how this film can really be offensive. That's not the way it was intended. I don't really need to get into that. Maybe it's a bit controversial, but not too much actually. Considering I think one of the least controversial films among Kubrick's. Because really most of the films after this, maybe less so Full Metal Jacket, in the kind of the offensive nature and stuff than any other ones, but really the rest of his films, in some way, of course, of Barry Lyndon, were kind of offensive. People found them, some people, and of course, what happened with A Clockwork Orange, is one of the biggest kind of things in cinema, really, in cinema history. What happened there with the removal and stuff. But yes, I think this film actually, considering it's not that controversial, it's very, very loved. It's got, I believe it has an 8.5 on IMDb. It's a very, very loved film, critically, commercially, and it's known to be one of the best, and I couldn't agree more. It really is. Would I say it's one of the best Kubricks? Technically, no, because it's not. It's not like top 6 for me. There's a hint, but again, I think to say that I think this is not in the top 6 Kubricks, but I think it's one of the best films ever made. Just shy of the top 100 for me. It says it all, really. It doesn't mean that I like this less than I love. I really adore this film. I'm obsessed with it. It's just that happens. A lot of the later ones, after this, well, actually for me, all of the films that he made after this are better than Doctor Strangelove. So there we go. That's how good Kubrick is for me. And of course, this film is just so masterfully executed. The themes, the way they're explored, of course, so many hilarious moments. Of course, the kind of the way this film is shot is perfection. Of course, he uses a kind of handheld kind of shakiness as well to kind of the shooting scenes. It's kind of like you're in there in the action. Actually, very, very similar to Full Metal Jacket. A couple of scenes here and there, and yes, just the kind of sophistication though to most of the film, the way it's shot, the sets. The war room really is one of the greatest sets of all time. Of course, for me, we top that with probably the greatest set of all time. Just in general in 2001. I think maybe I didn't say that in my review, but it probably is the best for me. It's mind blowing. It's never ever going to be topped. It really is perfect. And this, of course, again containing some of the greatest sets of all time. Just the script, the way it's kind of just so layered and kind of so many meanings, so many layers to this the script alone. The performances are amazing. They really are stunning. Peter Sellers, of course, one of my favourite actors. I personally think, in terms of comedians, he's only beaten by a few people, including Chaplin. He's just hilarious. In this film, he's kind of just perfect in every role. The president, of course, as well. The warm kind of president, and stuff more kind of restrained. And then, of course, you've got the other two characters, including, of course, Dr. Strangelove himself, who is just one of the greatest characters in cinema. It's really hilarious what happens there. It could have been, and many other actors would not have been able to pull that off in the kind of same sort of way, and for it to be as funny, it really is perfect. And of course, yes, I just love how kind of you see Doctor Strangelove, for a lot of the film before the halfway mark, and then he comes into it. But yes, you do see the character of Doctor Strangelove, at the table. It's really, when you rewatch it, it's kind of very, very. It's amazing to see that. It's very disturbing actually. The way it's kind of, again, the framing. It's so kind of unique. The framing, I absolutely love the way Kubrick shoots his films. And again, he would jump. The next few, he really would, and of course, he would grow for me as a filmmaker even more to greater heights. And of course, yes, I think this is a perfect masterpiece. We'll wrap up there. There is, nothing else I can say to praise this film. It is perfect in every way for me. I think it's one of the greatest comedies of all time. I think really not many comedies, apart from some Chaplin's, really beat this film for me. Kind of pure comedies. At least this, of course, is just one of the best satires in cinema. The way it kind of, what it says, about how things operated within the government and the loss of control, and just kind of how kind of ironic it is and everything. It's just genius. It really is. Such an acute judgment, and it's just so well executed that it's kind of hilarious and very disturbing at the same time. It can be used in so many different cases in history, going further back as well. But yes, of course, this time was just so on edge, and it kind of perfectly portrays that, the tension and everything, while also being one of the funniest films for me I've ever seen. And of course, every line in this film has got kind of so many different meanings, and it's so hilarious and kind of just gripping. This is such a compelling thriller, so atmospheric. Of course, the way it's shot and everything, and just the uses of silence, but also the use of music, of course, as well. The epic use of music in the planes. It's also wonderful, this film. It's so masterfully executed. This is how you achieve a satire. This is how you make one. It's absolutely flawless for me, and of course, it gets into my plus tiers easily. 100% plus. Tier 2, just grazing out that sort of top 100 mark for me. Just kind of grazing around there, having a little mosey. It really is very close, and it was kind of along for the later, kind of around that mark. I'm not going to say which I prefer, definitely not, but I think maybe the slight edge possibly goes to this, although again, I think on many days I might say Lolita is actually a better film. I'm not going to say what I prefer, but it gets the same rating. Not of course. Personally, for me, I don't like it as much as Spartacus. I gave it a tier 1. But yeah, I think this is one of the best films ever made. If you've not seen the film, well, this is kind of a spoilers review. I've gone into some of the stuff, stuff, especially the ending. But yes, I think I'd recommend, even if you've not seen it for a few years, to rewatch it, because again, it's a film that every time I see this, it just gets better and better. The first time I saw it, it blew me away. This is my 4th time now, I believe. Possibly, yes, my 4th time. Of course, I watched it first 2014, and it really wowed me. There's so much that I'm obsessed with in this film. Cinematography, the editing, which is perfect. The script, this is something to really study. You know, the acting, of course. Every performance in this is absolutely perfect, and it's just a perfect portrayal of all these different kind of, it's just all of these characters. You know, all of these characters kind of based around different kind of you know, things and stuff and people, and it's just so good. I think, you know, the ending to this film is one of the best in cinema, and of course it reels you in straight away with just such a wonderful kind of opening, and it's so tense, it's so you know, kind of spiritual. It really is, like all Kubrick's are, and of course, for me, by far, you know, better than films like Paths of Glory and The Killing. It really is, but again, not, you know, in his top 6 for me. So that's how good Kubrick is for me. And of course, we've only really reviewed one of them 6 films, you know, at least, you know, which is 2001, of course. And yes, I think this film is flawless. If you've not seen it, of course, and you're just skipping to the end now, highly recommend it. I think this is one of the best films ever made. If you like comedies, if you like satires, you know, just the thrillers, and of course, if you've seen Kubrick films but not this one, highly recommend it. Of course, it is one of my favourite films of all time. And yes, next up, of course, is A Clockwork Orange. Now, that really is a special film for me, and of course, I will probably be reviewing that. Yeah, it could be another 2 weeks from now, but yes, of course, because we'll skip over 2001. I've already reviewed that, and then of course we move on to Barry Lyndon, The Shining, and of course Full Metal Jacket and Eyes Wide Shut. So yes, very interesting to see the comments and stuff on that. Of course, let me know what you think of this film in the comments, and yes, thanks for watching my review.